Morning. Everybody hear me? Hi. All right. My name is Jane Chin, but you can call me JQ for short. I work as a partner solutions architect for distribution here at AWS. I have about 10 years of technical experience under my belt, having worked at Facebook and Google as a solutions architect. So happy to be presenting on behalf of AWS today. It's very good to see everybody. We have a lot of presentations coming from our partners in WestCon and Topo area. But today I really want to talk about how to run your AWS cloud model. Because predominantly a lot of people here, I think the audience are pretty familiar with cloud, right? So I'm not going to go through a one-on-one. I really want to talk about how to run AWS at scale, and that's about running and maintaining your cloud operations model. To that end, we do have developed a couple of new features last year at reInvent. I want to share them with you today. So let's get into that. A lot of companies of every size are moving to AWS because of a lot of benefits they can get from just moving on to cloud, right? The most important factor will probably be cost savings, right? You can gain about 51% of total cost of ownership because you no longer have physical infrastructure in your database. That's one thing. Second is staff productivity. Now you no longer have to worry about buying all the physical infrastructure. Now you can focus a little bit more about just provisioning your server with just a click of a button. Next, you get more operational resilience, right? Because now a lot of reliability and a lot of liability in terms of service uptime is now onto AWS. It's no longer on your physical infrastructure. So with that, we have seen about a 57% decrease in downtime, statistically speaking, globally, right? And agility, because that gives you a little bit more time to innovate instead of having to worry about physical infrastructure. You get a little bit more, decrement in the ability for you to market quickly your services. And finally, for for those who are more environmentally conscious, carbon savings is taking a little bit more precedence in many people's buying decision. So that's why we also have a benefit of having about 88% reduction in carbon footprint. AWS is fortunate to be a leader in the cloud space, and that's why we are able to define the cloud operations model. Millions and millions of customers out there, lots of traffic. We are supported by hundreds and thousands of partners in our APN network. We see about 2.3 quadrillion matrices at any given month. So that is quite a significant number, quite mind-boggling in my opinion. So because of that, we have the ability to actually define the cloud operations model. Customers we have range from banks like Goldman Sachs to well-known companies in streaming like Netflix. But let's deep dive a little bit more into cloud operations, right? In public sector specifically, you need to do three things well, right? First is governance, security, and compliance. Those are the must-haves in public sector, right? But they should also be augmented by agility, speed, and automation. And you need to do it at scale. Otherwise, you can have all the bells and whistles, the application can be fancy, but if you can't, ensure that it's secure, compliant with government regulations, and you can't do it rapidly at scale, then it defeats the purpose. So that's why you need to ensure whatever applications and deployment they have on the AWS fits within the realm of guardrails. Within the cloud operations model, I want to talk about three things, three pieces that encompasses the model itself. The first is the enablement piece, which ensures guardrails and governance. With this in mind, right, whatever applications and deployment you have will be confined to the certain regulatory framework that is already defined in Control Tower. So that's the more important piece. Then second, once you have developed those guardrails, the parameter that you can allow your developers to operate in, that's where you have the sustain, build, and migrate piece, right? That allows you to develop any applications that conforms to the regulatory framework that you have in mind. Maybe it has to be HIPAA compliant, maybe it has to be GDPR compliant. Define them, and then your developers can work within that framework. Next is observability. So being able to operate and actually monitor operations with insights, right? You need to be able to monitor how applications are performing on the cloud so that you can diagnose any issues that come along the way. For each of these pieces, we have our features and products that actually fit within those realms. So for the enablement piece, we have Control Tower, which is a service that lets you deploy multiple accounts to a with landing zone that adheres to best practices and rules and the guardrails that you've already developed, right? For the sustain, build, and migrate piece, you have CloudFormation for infrastructure as a service, code deployment, code pipeline to deploy your applications quickly at scale, and Migration Hub to help you actually migrate from on-premises to AWS Cloud, right? These are the tools we offer for this sustain piece. And then for the observability and for data, you have matrices, tools like CloudWatch and Systems Manager, which pulls together all the matrices that you see from CloudWatch so they get that single pane of glass visibility into your operations on AWS Cloud. Let's talk about the enablement piece first more specifically. You want to create that foundation with any sort of application you develop on AWS. Now, the North Star of what you want to do is need to be set up in a couple of minutes. It needs to be compliant with security frameworks, and you need to ensure that you can monitor what's happening at any given point in time. Some of our customers have also said that, JQ, I'm actually deploying an app. Is my data sovereign? Is it really true that whatever I deploy into AWS is going to be kept within AWS itself and doesn't go anywhere? So rest assured that is indeed the case. We give the control of where your data should be over to you. You dictate where you need to go. We won't move it anywhere else if you don't want it to. So it's sovereign to you, right? But some of our customers have also come back to us and say, well, that's fine and great. I know AWS can do that. How about my developers, my application developers, my managers out there? Right? How can I ensure that they don't move the data to anywhere else that I don't want them to go to, like, for some other country, right? So to that end, we have developed this, first of all, this is called Control Tower. There's data residency governance guardrails in Control Tower that lets you define when the account owners within the Control Tower framework, where they can deploy in so that you can ensure that they actually fit within the regulatory framework that you're actually enforcing for your developers on AWS. Right, so that's one nifty feature we announced at reInvent last year. Now moving on to the sustain, build, and migrate piece, right? You want to be able to, so you have your guardrails already developed nicely, right? Now you want to be able to package and develop the application safely and efficiently. So to that end, you want to be able to quickly reuse templates, right? You also want to be able to quickly, don't have to reinvest in new tools because you already have the tools you already have. So AWS, chances are, whatever tool that you're using will potentially be able to integrate with them in a similar fashion from before. And that will enable agility and governance. So one very good example of that would be Trace Together, right? So at the recent ASEAN Summit, we had the GovTech leader working together with our AWS Public Sector Solutions Architect to develop the Trace Together and Safe Entry app using a variety of services like Fargate, Lambda, and API Gateway, just to name a few. And they were able to do so very quickly at scale. And I'm sure everybody can attest to how quickly GovTech was able to quickly launch these apps, really. So I spoke to the solutions architect that did it before, and they had a bit of back and forth, but they were able to get this off the ground very quickly within just a few months. So kudos to the team for that. As with any application developer, your goal should be looking to reduce your costs, leverage easily available services for you like containerization, serverless features, and also be able to test them efficiently in case of any downtime, right? To that end, we came up with something called a Resilience Hub. It's a new interface that you can click on within AWS Cloud. It shows you whether your deployment is resilient, whether you're adhering to, like, say, multi-AZ, whether you're backing up frequent enough manner, whether there is any sort of gaps in the sort of application development that you've actually created, right? So in the event where you have a downtime and you're not sure what's the reason for it, or maybe you want to actually just check to see whether it's highly available enough, you can come to the Resiliency Hub and you will see a bunch of messages that can help you, guide you along the way. All right, so that's the Resiliency Hub. Next, observability. So it's quite a mouthful. It took me a while to get tongue twister. So you want to be able to observe and monitor the cloud application deployment, right? And when you look at how your AWS cloud is actually performing right now, you need to have that single pane of glass, that metric kind of tool to let you know how the application is actually developing. So we have CloudWatch, which lets you ingest traces, API calls, log, matrices, to let you know how each and every one of the services are performing. We also have CloudTrail to track API calls made between the different AWS services. But at the end of the day, data really drives the decision-making process in AWS, right? You want to make sure that whatever, at AWS, we have this saying that goes like this: you should only manage what you can measure, right? If you can't measure it, then you basically it's a black box that you can't really look at, right? So our job here at AWS and our vision is to give you as many tools as we possibly can to let you measure what you want to measure, right? So to that end, we also want to understand that there is a huge volume of data, especially in this transition. I think Ken alluded to just now, we are moving from monolithic on-premises application to cloud hybrid deployments, right? And that brings about a whole new dynamic in the cloud infrastructure space. Because you're talking not just a standard EC2 instance, you're talking about EC2 instance that can scale up and scale down with auto scaling. Then you have EKS, ECS, Fargate. That infrastructure is always going to be constantly changing. So how to keep a pace and keep monitoring on top of that, right? So we try to give you some tools to help you with this along the way. In CloudWatch, we've implemented a new feature called Metrics Insight. It supports SQL, so everybody knows SQL. You can just go deep dive into the data you want to see, and then if you have specific patterns that you want to discern, we are able to offer that in the dashboard for you. So you might have already come across these services in various flavors from our partners. We are bringing that in-house for you in CloudWatch, right? Next, you want to make it easier for you to roll out application features. Like if you have a new feature that you want to, a lot of the times, right, applications, websites, when you roll out new features, that is the point of contention for some of our end customers, because that's really the first point of contact with the business and the end customer, right? Any sort of issues you see along the way, that's going to put a dent on your reputation and your user experience. So that's why you mentioned that the first time you launch an application, a new feature, you want to make sure it's tested smoothly. So we actually developed our own A/B testing tool already called CloudWatch Evidently, which allows you to first release the feature to a small segment of users in your test pool, and then gradually ramping it up to a bigger pool as you see the adoption take up pace. All right, so this is the A/B testing tool that gives you the ability to test according to your needs. Again, we bring that into CloudWatch Evidently. And then end user monitoring as well. So this is, you guys probably know this as application user monitoring, which allows you to see the user experience of various geographical regions on various endpoints and what sort of services and API calls they are leveraging when they use your application on AWS. Right, so this again supports SQL, so you will be able to see which specific region is undergoing a lot of traffic, a lot of downtime that you might really want to look into on AWS. Right, and this is also on CloudWatch. So as you can see, we are trying to give a little bit more visibility into what is happening, not just on AWS cloud itself, because traditionally CloudWatch is known as like something to trigger alarms, right? To trigger other Lambda features or something along that line. But we are bringing a little bit more visibility through application monitoring, as well as more insights for you to actually look at on the CloudWatch platform. Next, you want to be able to, you have all this done, right? But again, you want to make sure it complies with security regulations, right? So compliance is a very difficult task. It's it's a high mountain that you want to climb. Most of our tools, the audit tools that we talked about just now, are CIS recommended, critical infrastructure, so that it will be rest assured that's the case. But the thing is, enterprises are usually subjected to a lot of that. And some of it can be helped and mitigated with the guardrails we deploy on a control tower. But what we want to help you more. So we're trying to do something that's more automated and centralized for you to deploy from, right? So that when your audit team comes in and say, Mr. Company, I want to check if you are HIPAA compliant or GDPR compliant. You don't need to go like, say, scramble around. You can just go to AWS Artifacts, press one button, generate the article for them, and then you can just audit it and can take that tab. In the past, you need like at least like 80 people to do it. So it's a godsend for you to be able to just do it within AWS itself, one click of a button. We want to reduce also DIY solutions for you to comply to these regulations. Help you query the CloudTrail matrices in real time, and control, the massive spread of data that is using various other features that you don't really want to get out of. So to do that end, right, we also come up with another SQL tool within CloudWatch called Manage Audit Lake, which allows you to take logs and trace any sort of API calls made between different API services into AWS Cloud more efficiently. And this all can be done in CloudTrail itself. You'll be happy to know that it not just supports the individual account, but multi-account setup in the multi-organization as well. So if you have any sort of API calls and made between various other organizations, you will be able to track them here within CloudTrail too. But at the end of the day, right, we have all these bells and whistles. The one thing I really want to point out is that we have a lot of tools and services and resources to help you with your cloud enablement journey, right? So we have managed services to help you offload some of those cloud operational regimen to your partners so that you don't have to do it yourself. In terms of partners as well, if you're running a cloud operations and you're new to this, you can also engage with our partners who have more experience running cloud operations so that you can focus a little bit more on developing the applications that you desire on AWS Cloud. We have, of course, Marketplace. You can have a lot of deployed software packages out there, so you don't have to develop yourself. And then if you are interested in building that lean, mean force to help augment your application development, we have training and certification teams, guide pipelines. We also have our newly launched self-paced skill builder to help you, assimilate and keep abreast of the latest and greatest in AWS. And if you have teams out there looking to getting the professional certification, November 16 is the last deadline for version 2. Version 3 is coming out after that, so good luck, you guys. We have never had it before. And we also have best practices, cloud adoption framework, and well-architected review in case you are lost as to how to actually create the resilient infrastructure that you want to have on AWS. Feel free to peruse the frameworks and best practices we have available online. So for more information, oh yeah, the last thing I want to actually, this is a summary, so I'm just going to skip it. So for more information on AWS cloud operations, do feel free to visit our website or scan the QR code if you are keen on that. And just one last pitch for reInvent. It's happening in Vegas next week. If you have the chance, do fly there. Otherwise, you can actually attend it virtually for free in the next weeks to come. So this is where we will announce a lot of things called AWS, including cloud operations as well. So stay tuned for that. So with that, I will hope everybody had a good learning session, and I'll pass you over to Taekwon.